Yes, 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 yes. We showing some great love today. Hello, everybody. This is Gina from Talk with Gina. And I tell you, it's so great to see all of you today. Thank you so much for understanding that we changed that time to 3:30. And look at you. You all are right here, live and in living color, waiting to hear the story about my fabulous guest that I have coming on soon. You know, the show is about wellness, learn, uplift, and inspire. And my theme song, Mad Love, that's because I show you the mad love by bringing some great guests on. And all of you show me that mad love by sharing the information because you never know who it can help. So I got to tell you, this guest right here, I have to thank a family member of mine who told me about her and shared her dynamic story. And she called me up and she said, you know what, cuz I really, really would like for you to have her on because her story is inspiring. So her name is Dawn Breedon. She's a speaker, author, facilitator, and coach. The name of her book is called Remember to Breathe. And after you hear her story, you will see why she named her book Remember to Breathe. So without further ado, I want all of you to help me welcome the beautiful Dawn Breedon. Hey, Dawn.
Hi, I'm glad to be here.
And we're so glad to have you. We're so glad to have you. Oh my goodness. How have you been?
I'm doing wonderful, and I'm feeling mad love being on your show. So I'm very grateful to your family member who reached out to me and said, "Can I tell?" And I said, "Absolutely." So I'm really grateful, and I'm grateful to be here. And I'm actually a native of New Jersey. I live here in Florida now, but I'm a native from New Jersey, so right across the George Washington Bridge. That's where I'm from,
I love it.
Bergen
I love
County.
it. I absolutely love it. So as I said, and as you already know, this show is about wellness, right? And it's the journey that we concentrate on because sometimes folks think that wow, I see what this person is doing, and maybe they did it just now, and it didn't happen just now. It was a process. There were things that we didn't even know. Life takes us through dips and turns. So we're going to actually start now, all right? Because there is so much to tell about your story. So we already know you're from New Jersey, right? All right. So I know we're gonna dive into the story about what happened to you. This vicious attack that you actually dealt with. So, what were you doing before the vicious attack happened? What was going on with Dawn? What was happening with Dawn?
So I grew up in New Jersey in a very positive family environment.
Mhm.
And I say positive family environment because my mother was always, an optimist. My brother, actually, he was like 9 years older than me. He gave me a book called, when I was 17, called Looking Out for Number One. It was about this thick. It was about a tortoise. I remember two things. And it was never get mentally or physically upset. So
Mhm.
those were two things that I took from that 400-page book that I always remembered. And as I grew up, I started doing hair. I started doing hair actually when I was like 12, right? But then I went to school for hair. I had a hair salon. And my brother, that same brother, actually was doing a program where he got some tapes that were by Les Brown, the motivational
Mhm.
speaker. And I remember this is back in the 80s, and I'm listening to these tapes, and I heard him listening to the tapes. So I actually took the tape. I stole the tapes. Okay. I took the tape from my brother and I took them to my hair salon and I started playing them every day. So I literally became, as I say, brainwashed. And so did my clients. And I kept playing these tapes every day. And I decided I wanted to be a motivational speaker. While deciding that I wanted to be a motivational speaker, I literally walked off a plank. And that's what I say, because I literally, as people came in, I said, June 30th is my last day as a hairdresser, and I want to be a motivational speaker. But
Uh-huh.
I really and truly believe God said, wait, we don't know what's going to happen. God knows everything. And I made up cards and I'm going to go do my motivational speaking. And I had a couple of speaking engagements. One was for a hair hair product distributor,
Mm-hmm.
and I had a couple speaking engagements. So I was in the supermarket one night getting some dinner to fix for a friend of mine, and this guy that was in the line in front of me, nice looking guy, started talking to me, and I noticed that he didn't just have frozen foods on the belt. So he had
Mm-hmm.
a lot of good stuff on the belt.
Mm-hmm.
And we exchanged numbers. I proudly gave him one of my cards. He had a nice, I saw him drive off. He had a nice new car. And we started talking every night after he would get off work. I think he worked from like 3 to 11, and
Okay.
he was actually going to college, and he was on the dean's list. So I had a good hit. I had, he had his own car, he had his own house, he was on the dean's list, he was going to school.
Mm-hmm.
Every night we would talk on the phone. We had our first date 1 week later. We talked on the phone every night. We had our first date. He actually,
Mm-hmm.
the day after I met him, he sent me a dozen long stem red roses
Wow. So you were blown
for the
away.
first date.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yes. He came to pick me up. He took me to a gospel concert and out to dinner because he knew I was a Christian. I loved gospel. He took me to well, you know what? While I was talking to him on the phone, and
Mm-hmm.
every night that first week, when I would hang up the phone and I would go to sleep, every night I had nightmares. And I was
Mm.
like, this is a good guy. So, I blamed it on the devil. And I said, you know what? The devil just trying to break this up because this is a good guy. I had these nightmares.
Mm.
What I know now, Gina, is that God was trying to show me he was going to be my worst nightmare.
Yeah. Isn't that something? How we can breathe, we can dream what actually is. Wow. So
Exactly.
you
So
started
I'm
dating
3
him.
months into the
Mm-hmm.
date, and I love when I think it's Steve Harvey talks about the probationary period, and that's what I always tell people, because you need some time to get to know people.
Yes.
And I always say I give it 4 months because I'm on my best behavior as well. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So about 3 months in, I was just like, nah, this is not working out, and found out the rabbit died. I was
Mm.
pregnant. Now, at this point, I was 31 years old. So I had traveled. I've done a lot. You know what? I'm going to have this child. Now, I'm totally conscious that when a woman decides to have a child, she should decide based on herself and
Mm-hmm.
not the man. Now,
Mm-hmm.
my father died, so my mother became a single parent. Could happen. But
Mm-hmm.
I decided I'm going to have this child. And so we started, I told him about it. We were going to go to, he asked me, he did the honorable thing. He asked me to marry him. We were going to
Mm-hmm.
go to marriage counseling. And
Right.
we went to a marriage. Well, he was he's like a psychologist. And we went to him. And I remember he said, the child, he said, he will be okay until the child is about 3 or 4.
Wow.
What does that mean?
Right. Right. Right.
Well, first of all, at 5 months pregnant, by the time I was 5 months, my brother called me up and told me that he heard a rumor that an old boyfriend of mine was dying of AIDS. Now, I knew emphatically I was going to be negative. I went out with that guy 10 years prior.
Mm-hmm.
I knew I was not, as we the word, promiscuous.
Right.
At the same time, remember back then we didn't use condoms. We just worried about birth control.
Mm. And I was going to ask you that. Right, right, right. I was definitely going to ask you if condoms came into play when you
No
were dealing.
condoms
So
back then.
when you decided to have relations with your son's father, it was just raw sex. There was no discussion about who you with, who you've been with. It was just raw
No,
sex. Okay,
I'm going
so
back to the 80s.
right, right, right. Okay.
Okay, we didn't even
Mhm.
discuss that.
Right.
Now
Okay.
I always went to the doctor in between men.
Mm-hmm.
So if I was going to have something, I'd know where it came from.
Okay.
But I wasn't looking for HIV.
Right. Right. Right.
So my brother called me up, told me this, and when I went for my visit, my
Mm-hmm.
prenatal visit, I said to the doctor, just like this, oh, and by the way, give me one of those HIV tests. Now, let me just back up
Mm.
for a second and tell you that 3 years prior to this, I had asked my doctor on a routine visit for an HIV test because we had started hearing about HIV.
Right.
And my doctor would not test me because I didn't fit into the high risk group.
Mm.
I was doing what society said was acceptable. I was sleeping with one man. I owned a hair salon. I went on 4 vacations a year. I had 2 cars. I drove one when it was raining and one when it wasn't.
Okay.
So my doctor said, no, you don't need an HIV. So that was 3 years before. So now here it is. I'm in prenatal visit. Back then, it took 2 weeks to get your test results. And they were literally the longest 2 weeks of your life because it took 2 weeks to get those test results.
Right.
And when I went back, they came to me and they said, they brought a social worker in. We're sorry, but your test came back positive. Now, this was my first child.
Right.
The one that I
Right.
waited until I was 31 to have, because it was a conscious decision to have a child.
Right.
This was my first child. So the first thing I had to do was tell my son's father. I went to him crying, of course, and I told him. And he was very supportive. And he said, well, you need to get another test. And I said, yes, I do. So I said, and you need to get tested.
Right.
So I lived I don't know if some people know where this is, but it's Bergen County, New Jersey, which was kind of like an affluent area in New Jersey. And Bergen County, when I went to the doctor, they said, we need you to schedule an abortion down in Essex County. We don't touch people like you. And I said, no, you need to give me another test. So they said, oh, okay, well, we're going to send you to the health department in the county. And when I went to go to the health department, now we had what was called anonymous testing at the time. So they would give you a number and they supposedly didn't have your information. But when I walked into the health department, the lady said, hi, Dawn. Hi, Dawn. I'm Charlotte.
Isn't that something?
Okay. They told me to talk you into having an abortion. I can't do that. She said, because when I was 16, I had polio and they told me I would never have any children. And I have 2 beautiful children. So this was now my second test. I got my test. And then I came back 2 weeks later. And again, it was positive. By that time, my son's father had scheduled his tests in Passaic County. And I always told people, like in New Jersey, people would say, oh my goodness, Passaic has this and Essex County has this. I said, because people in Bergen County are going to get tested there. We got tested in New York.
In the same county, right?
Exactly. So you're looking around saying, you're making judgment, oh, those counties,
Right.
But guess what? All these people are not getting tested there. Again, it took 2 weeks. Now, back then, you went in one room, they went in the other, got your test, came back 2 weeks later, got your test results, went in one room, went in the other. He got in the car and he said, I'm negative. And I said, oh, thank God. Because I felt like I could handle it better than he could.
Right.
You ever feel like you can handle something better than somebody else?
Yes.
Now, I immediately, when I first got that first test, I stopped having sex with him. So he couldn't say, I found out and gave it to him.
Right. So you were earned on the side of caution.
Absolutely.
So,
I always tell people, I share a lot of things, but this is not one of them.
Right.
So, matter of fact, we didn't even have the information that we have now. I was like, don't touch me, don't kiss me, don't nothing.
Right.
However, I was pregnant. And every mother wants to protect that child.
So let me ask you, and I didn't mean to cut you. So then when you found out that you were pregnant, when the diagnosis at 5 months pregnant, did the doctors immediately put you on a cocktail regimen? No. So you went through your pregnancy without, as a normal pregnancy, like any woman would, with the typical prenatal visits and so forth.
Well, I did a little bit different because you know what? See, they hadn't done the studies yet. about preventing a child from becoming positive. So what I did was I did my own research.
Mm-hmm.
At the time, the only drug they had back then was AZT, and people were literally dropping like flies.
Yeah.
So they had not done the study. So what I
Mm-hmm.
did was I said, okay, let me look this up. And it says it's immune deficiency. So that means that I need to fortify my immune system. And when you're
Mm-hmm.
pregnant, you just can't take anything.
Mm-hmm.
So what I did was I started juicing. That's what I did to fortify my immune system. And of course, I took my prenatal vitamins, and then I didn't want to take too much of anything either, because you can do
Mm-hmm.
that. So
Okay.
I just did the best that I could. But they told me, they said, the baby will be fine, but you won't make it through the next 9 months.
Hmm.
Yeah, that was
That's
22 years ago. I'm so
yeah.
glad they couldn't count. So now here it is. We go back, we get the results. He's positive, and I'm pregnant. And I relied on my faith. See, a lot of people, something happens and then they go to God. I had already been there.
Mm-hmm.
So I called up a friend of mine who was a minister, who's a youth minister at a church. And I said, listen, I told him that I was diagnosed. And he said, well, did you go to your church? And I said, no. He said, they have a healing school. I said, what's the healing school? So they had where they taught biblical principles for healing.
Mm-hmm.
So what I did was I was diagnosed 1 month before Magic Johnson went public.
Mm.
So it was the topic of conversation for everybody.
Right. Right. And the death
So what
sentence that accompanied with, as everybody was
absolutely.
thinking. Mm-hmm.
So what I did was I took my concordance. I wrote down every scripture pertaining to healing. I wrote it on a legal pad, and I
Mm-hmm.
spoke it into a tape recorder, because faith comes by hearing, and hearing by the word of God.
Amen.
So I spoke it
Mm-hmm.
into a tape recorder so I could play it. And I prayed at the end of it, and I prayed for Magic too by this time, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I went to the hospital. I was going to the clinic at the hospital, at Inglewood Hospital, and I went and I said, listen, if you have something to help me,
Mm-hmm.
okay. But if you can't help me, I'm going to God, and you can't play him.
Right.
And the doctor, they had this African doctor, and he looked at me, he said, oh, I like your attitude.
Mm-hmm.
So I was constantly listening. Every time I went to the clinic, I had my Bible with me. I was listening to these tapes on my Walkman.
Mm-hmm.
And I was laying in the bed one night, and I said, what if this don't work? Nobody wants a sick child. And God spoke to me as clear as I'm speaking to you, Gina. And he said, you know that you're saved, right? And I said, yes. He says, sometimes you don't act like it. I
That's
said, yeah.
right. Yeah. Because you started to question. Because if once you say, I let go and I let God, then that needs to be it. If you say it and then you question, then that means God knows that your faith is not all the way there.
Absolutely. And he
Mm-hmm.
gave us stuff to strengthen our faith with. And he said, sometimes you don't feel like it. I said, no.
Mm-hmm.
He said, sometimes you don't look like it. I said, no.
Mm-hmm.
He said, but you never doubt that you're saved. I said,
Mm-hmm.
no. He said, when I saved you, I healed you. Never
Mm.
doubt that you're healed.
Wow.
I just held on to that.
Yeah.
I
So
held on.
yeah. Mm-hmm. So now you're 5 months. Well, you're much further along now, past the 5 months. And so now it's time to have the baby. Did you have a vaginal birth or a cesarean?
I actually had a C-section. I went to the doctor. I went to the hospital. My water broke. I went to the hospital, and
Mm-hmm.
they were like, oh, you're not dilated enough. We're going to do a C-section. I was like, okay, which they had said that there was less of a chance of the baby coming in contact with my blood, which is weird, if I had a C-section.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So they gave me a C-section, and my son, he was like 7 pounds, I think it was, if I remember back then. So they gave him, now what was really funny, it was really weird, because they came and asked me if I was on drugs, because they said he was shaking, and I didn't take any drugs. Unfortunately, my biggest vice then is still my biggest vice now, which is sugar. I like sweets,
Mm-hmm.
Twinkies, cakes, cookies, whatever. And I'm trying to fight this still now. So
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know why he had the shakes, but they came to me and asked me, "Are you sure?" And I'm like, "No," and there was no
Right.
drugs in my blood, so they
Right.
knew that. My son was in that 30 percentile that remained HIV positive. So it used to be that 30% of all the babies that were born to women who were HIV positive, and I have to say only 30%, would
Mm-hmm.
be HIV positive.
Right.
So in 1996, they did a study. And in that study, they gave women who were HIV positive, who were
Mm-hmm.
pregnant, they gave half of them a placebo and half of them they gave AZT during the pregnancy, during delivery, and for 6 weeks after they gave it to the babies. They
Okay.
stopped the study halfway through because it was inhumane not to give it to the other women, because
Mm.
they were seeing that it was preventing the babies from becoming positive.
From becoming positive. So was the father there through the birth? Was he at the hospital with you?
He was
Were
there
you
and he
still
was
in the
very
relationship?
attentive. Yes,
Mm-hmm.
he was
Still
very
very
attentive.
supportive.
He wanted to get back with me, but again, I'm like,
Right. So from the time you found out that you were HIV positive, you shut down relations and you never resumed relations with him again. So you had the baby, he was still supportive. And then so now take us to what happened, Dawn. Why did you have a 2-year custody battle with this man who was seemingly so supportive?
So I was going to a doctor in New York, and I was doing alternative treatments, and he just snapped. As far as I saw it, he just snapped one day. He told me that he didn't want his son to go through anything bad, and that he would literally, he said, "I'll slit your throat
Hmm.
and bury you in your own backyard."
Hmm. Hmm.
We had an altercation one night. He came to take my son out of my house,
Hmm.
and I had to call the police, and I had to get the police to go to his house to
Hmm.
bring my son out. And at first, the officer said to me, "Oh, we're not going to bring him out." And I'm like, "Oh my God, what's going to happen?"
Hmm.
But there was a female officer, and she came, and no, it was a male officer, and he said, "I'm not comfortable leaving that baby in there." So they brought the baby out, and I said, "Well, don't let him see me because he's going to cry," because I thought they were going to take him to someplace. And they said, "No,
Hmm.
we're giving him to you." So now he's already threatened to slit my throat. So I had to go get a restraining order.
Hmm.
So I went to get the restraining order, and we were in and out of court for 2.5 years. And he had supervised visits.
Hmm.
And one day the judge said, they looked at me like, "Oh, you got HIV."
Hmm.
And I was like, my lawyer said, that he needed to be tested also, but nothing ever came of that, which was really strange.
Hmm. Hmm.
So here we are in and out of court. He literally quit his job. The judge granted joint custody, physical joint custody. So I
Wow.
had him 4 days, he had him 3. He literally quit his job so that he didn't have to pay child support. But the judge saw through that and said, "No, you're going to pay him for that one day."
Right.
So here we are in and out of court, in and out of court, in and out of court. So January the 6th, even though I had a restraining order,
Hmm.
he came to my house to pick my son up.
Hmm.
I remember how many feet of snow or inches we had, but he literally grabbed my throat and threw me down the stairs.
Hmm.
And when he threw me down the stairs, I got up and I'm like this, and he pulled out a switchblade and he went to slit my throat. And I
Wow.
blocked him with my hand. You can't even see the scar anymore. I blocked him with my hand. And then he saw it. I guess he realized what he had done. I was like, backing up. And he scooped my son up and put him in the car. And I just knew emphatically he was going to take my son to school. So I go in the house and I call my attorney first. And he said, "Call the police." So I call 911. Now, mind you, my hand's bleeding.
Hmm.
So I wrap my hand in a towel because I don't want anybody to come in contact with this blood from my hand.
Right.
So they sent an ambulance. And at that time, my address and my diagnosis went out over the police radio. So they take me to the hospital, and I'm sitting there, and you know how like they triage you first, they get all the information, and I see a blur run past me, not realizing that that blur was 3 officers, one of which was carrying my son.
Mm, mm,
And I'm sitting there and I'm going, I got to call the school. I got to see how my son is. And this
right.
nurse came out and she said, Dawn, Vaughn is here. And I said, oh, thank God. And she
Right.
said, he's not talking. So I'm thinking, you know what? He just saw his father attack his mother.
Right. And
That's why
how old is Vaughn at this time?
3.5.
Okay.
It was right before his 4th birthday.
Okay.
This was January. His birthday was in March.
Mm-hmm.
So they come and they take me into a room, and they're like, we're going to take you to see your son. So they take me in this room where there's about 10 doctors all around this bed.
Mm-hmm.
And they literally, the doctor at the head backed up. They said, you can just say a few words. And I leaned in and I said, Jesus loves you.
Mm.
They pull me back, and they're working on my son. So they put me back in this room. And by this time, some friends and family members are coming. So they're putting them all in the room with me. And the doctor comes in,
Mm-hmm.
and he says, I'm sorry, but the father did not make it.
Mm.
I had been through hell for 2.5 years.
Right.
So I just started shouting. Now, I didn't wish it on him.
Right. Right. Right.
So then I said to the doctor, I said, let me see him. So my cousin comes with me because she's like, oh, Lord, she's going to beat up the corpse. Okay. I just wanted to see, like, it was like, you know, the monster's dead.
Right.
I had been through hell for that's a whole nother story.
Right.
And so I come back in the room, and the doctor had put his cousin in the room with me.
Mm-hmm.
And she says, I knew she was going to make him do something like this. I
Of
said,
course, the
oh,
blame
you
game to you.
know
Right.
he
Mm-hmm.
was capable of this? And the
Right.
doctor realized what he did, and he took her out. Well, my town is a very small town. Inglewood, New Jersey, small town. We have 1 high school, 1 middle school.
Mm-hmm.
You know, many towns got 2 and 3 high schools, 5, whatever. All right. We're not in New York where PS this and that and the other.
Right.
No. Okay.
It's just one. So everybody pretty much knows one another. That's the point.
Exactly.
It's a small town. Yes.
Everybody knew me.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. If they didn't know me, they knew my brothers. If they didn't know my brothers, they knew my mother. So everybody knew me.
Right.
And so now everything is, you know, hitting the wire. Literally, the news came. Everybody's talking about me. And they're not just talking about my son being killed. They're talking about my diagnosis.
Well, because we jumped a little bit. So now Vaughn comes into the hospital. What happened to Vaughn? Why did Vaughn end up in the hospital?
He poisoned him with cyanide and ammonia. And the police were literally right outside his bedroom door.
And how did Vaughn?
They had gone to his house because I had called the police. They went to the school first. He wasn't there. They gone to his house. And when they pulled up, he was in the window brandishing a knife. And he said, if you come up here, I'm going to slit his throat. So someone in his house, I believe it was his uncle, let him in. And they went up to the bedroom, and they were literally right outside the door. And they could hear my son crying. And they were trying to talk him into bringing him out. Mm-hmm. So as they were trying to talk him into bringing him out, they all of a sudden didn't hear anything anymore. And that's when they busted in the door, and he was slumped over my son. And they pulled my son out, and they tried to resuscitate him because he drank the same cyanide and ammonia. It was cyanide, and they found the cup, cyanide and ammonia mixed in orange juice.
And what was his reasoning in killing Vaughn?
Well, you know what? See, I'll never really have the answer to why a parent kills a child. I will never be able to answer that.
Because I thought that I heard that he made some crass remark about him having the HIV.
Well, he didn't want Vaughn to have to deal with that.
Right.
But what I didn't realize, and I didn't find out, you know, I think everything was like kind of like a blur because there was no court case, Gina, because he killed himself. So everything was kind of like a blur. they found a suicide letter.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't see that suicide letter until 9 years later, when a newspaper reporter was investigating my story, and she was trying to find out everything that had happened. So when she called me and she said, I need to see you. And because I'm open book, I'm going to talk to everybody. And she said, I'm going to find out. So she went and she got the folder. She had a copy of the folder from the Bergen County Prosecutor's Office. And in that folder, she found out that he was HIV positive.
Mm.
I did not know. See, when we're talking to somebody, this is another thing that I like women to understand. If you're telling the truth, you believe everybody else is telling the truth.
Right. Right.
So she calls me and she says, Dawn, he was positive. And I said, no, he wasn't, because I believed. And I used to go on, I was speaking all this time, 9 years, like I said, 9 years later. And I would always say, I think my son's father was negative. And I say to you, I think, because I have learned that unless you are in the room when they get the diagnosis,
You don't know.
You don't know.
It's so
People
true.
lie.
They do.
And she pulled this paperwork out and showed that he was positive, and showed me the letter that they found in his pocket. And I actually put the letter in, I wrote word for word in my book. I actually put it in my book. And he said, in the letter, he said, God, will you forgive me? Now, the funny part about that, Gina, was that he had told me that he was agnostic, that he believed that there was a God, but no one could really know him. That was his definition. So now, but he's writing to God on the suicide letter. So she showed me this, and I'm like dumbfounded. And I remember a lot of times things happen and we feel like I'm gonna lose it, and that's how it feels. But I realized that when I said I'm gonna lose it, I was really just gonna cry.
Yeah.
Because sometimes I don't want to cry.
Sure. But and you're doing so you are doing your best to be responsible in not making sure that he end up becoming infected. And then you knew within yourself, like, wait a minute, it was 10 years since I dealt with my ex when my brother told me. So even though you never requested an HIV test, because I know back then folks weren't really asking, it was really the doctors after test after test coming back, maybe negative on something, that they might say, you know what, let me test you for HIV. But it wasn't right away. So here it is now. It's very possible that it was not your ex-boyfriend.
Absolutely.
But it was him who infected you and never did the responsible thing. And this right here is so impactful, because we don't know. There is no face of AIDS. There's no face of HIV to be able to say, oh, yes, she, oh, yes, he. There is nothing. And like you said, we don't know unless we're in that room and we see it for ourselves. Other than that, we're just taking someone's word for gospel. And in other words, we're playing Russian roulette with our lives.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, we're playing
and that's
Russian
why
roulette.
I always tell people, have the conversation. So when my son was killed, I was 1 week pregnant with my second son. I met my second son's father in my doctor's office. So we were there for the same thing. So that made it more comfortable. Okay. However, if two people are HIV positive, they still need to use protection because they can reinfect each other.
So now your second son's father, his test came back positive.
Yeah, no, he was positive before we met.
Right. No, I'm just making sure that you knew that he was positive. So you met in the doctor's office. You were there because you took the test. And so he was open with it. You were open with it. So the both of you knew, but you still didn't use protection.
Right. So that was a comfortability there. Okay. So, this is transitions. That was 1996 by that time. So with my second son, I took AZT. during the pregnancy, during delivery, and gave it to my son for 6 weeks after. So my second son is now 26 years old. He's HIV negative.
Amen. Look at
Yay!
that. Yes, yes. And what is his name?
His name is Preston.
Oh, Preston,
Yeah.
precious Preston.
Yes. And I always say he came to save my life.
Mm-hmm.
Ironically, when I took my first son off life support, because he lived, well, I don't even know if he was real living, but he was on life support for 2 days.
Mm-hmm.
And when I took him off of life support,
Mm-hmm.
my friends came, and I literally, it was a Sunday. I remember it was a
Mm-hmm.
snowstorm. And I literally just said, I was just praying that, it was like, okay,
Right.
go and show me a sign. But there was no sign. I took him off life support, and I literally fell to the ground in the ICU.
Hmm.
And my friends were there to help me. And that's where the name of my book came from, because all I could do at that point was breathe.
Let's breathe.
That was
Yeah.
it. Remember to breathe.
Remember to breathe. Yeah.
All I could do at that point,
Mm-hmm.
if I could just breathe. If I knew if I could breathe, I could make
Mm-hmm.
it. That was it. That's all I had to do.
Right.
And one of my friends, she took me back to her home, her and her husband. And I just looked up at her and I said, I can't even pray.
You needed that time, Dawn. You needed that. I mean, I can't even imagine how overwhelmed you were. Uh-huh.
And she took my hands and she prayed for me.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I always tell people it's important who you have around you.
Yes.
You need to have some, because sometimes you may not be able to.
Mm-hmm.
It's important who you have around you.
Yeah.
And, this whole whirlwind, my
Mm-hmm.
son being killed, it's on the news, it's all over the media. Everybody's talking, and they're
Mm-hmm.
not just talking about my son being killed. I went into the bank 2 weeks after my son was killed, and the assistant manager looked at me and said, "Oh, I heard there's a lot of rumors going around." And I said, "I've
Mm-hmm.
heard all the rumors.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to hear them." Oh,
Right.
because the customers are coming in telling the tellers, and the tellers were telling me, and I heard it was going around the church. And like I always tell people, now I know how some church folk can be.
Mm-hmm.
And don't nobody get offended, because I'm born again, Holy Ghost filled, fire baptized,
Mm-hmm.
tongue talking, faith walking, washed in the blood, saved by grace. But I know how we can be.
Mm-hmm.
And she looked at me, she said, "Wow, I just wanted to know for myself." I said, "Let me tell you a truth." He held my son's neck so tight. She said, she threw her hands up. She didn't want to know that. She wanted to know my diagnosis.
Yeah. And unfortunately,
Of information on a need-to-know basis. If I'm not sleeping,
right.
what you don't need to know.
Exactly. And unfortunately, folks like that sensationalism, they just want to be in your business. And so after your son was killed, I can't even imagine all of the emotions that were going through you. And then at the same time, you have living life inside of you. So it's just so much going on. And so your shirt that you have on today, it says survivor. And
Yes.
so the reason why it's gray or it's silver is because Dawn is a survivor of many things. So that's why there isn't a specific color.
Yes.
And so with your son, I know you had some hard times after that, and it led you to having to seek public assistance. And that was another traumatic experience that you had to go through, because unfortunately these services are supposed to be there to help us to get on our feet. And I think that we all can say that there are some folks who want to play the system, and then there are folks who really need it. And unfortunately, I find anyway that there's some folks that may work in these places and maybe or could be a little bit jealous that you're receiving some services that they wish that they can get, and then now they're a bit nasty towards you. So you had to go through all of that, and you were able to finally get some help. But one of the things, because a lot of your story is very inspiring. One of the things that's very inspiring is that you wanted to do better, not just for yourself, but for your son.
Absolutely.
And so while you were on public assistance, you then wanted to go back to school, but you
Yes.
needed the paper to show, right? And so you were able to obtain that paper through it was like hell and high water to go through to get that paper to show so that you could get that the scholarship, or was it an internship?
It was more like I don't know. I think like the state paid for me to do computer graphics at the time. So I did the computer. I went to, I got on public assistance, and it was back at the time when I think it was President Clinton. I'm not sure. They had did Work First New Jersey, where people
Mm-hmm.
could not sit on public assistance any longer for life.
Mm-hmm.
So you could only you had a 5-year span or something like that. And I got signed up in January, and I knew that I needed to be retrained because I had done
Mm-hmm.
hair most of my life, and there was some people that didn't want their hair done by me anymore.
Yeah.
So I had done hair most of my life, and I said, you know what, I need to get retrained. So I was able to get that piece of paper, as you said, because first
Mm-hmm.
they didn't want me to go to school,
Right.
but I always tell people, when you need something,
Mm-hmm.
have to share a little bit, not a lot, but a
A
little bit
little
of your
bit of it.
pain, so
It's
that
true.
people can understand that I'm not
Mm-hmm.
as out here just trying to melt the system.
Right.
So I was able to go to computer graphics school, and literally the last day I went to a temp agency and got a job. I called up my public assistance worker and I said, hey, I got a job. And she had a real attitude. And she was like, you found it on your own? And I was like, yes. And so I go and I'm starting to work, and 2 weeks in, I'm feeling good because I'm coming off of public assistance. I'd only been on that January. This is now June. I'm doing
Mm-hmm.
good.
Right.
I get a phone call from my clinic where I went to get my HIV, infectious disease services, and I
Mm-hmm.
got my pap there and everything. And she said, Dawn, your test results came back. It's cancer. Anybody with HIV will tell you the last thing we want to hear is cancer.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I don't know what kind of cancer. I don't know how bad it is. All I knew, all of a sudden, I got cancer.
Mm-hmm.
Here I go, remembering to breathe again. I'm driving home that day, and I'm literally, I just gripped the steering wheel.
Mm-hmm.
And I realized, breathed on.
Right.
And I get home, and it's the weekend. I still don't know. And I had a pull-out couch. My son slept in the bedroom. I had a pull-out couch in the living room. And as I'm dismantling the pull-out couch to pull it out, I picked up the pillow, and every pillow I would hold it and I'd throw it down. I said, God, I know you didn't bring me this far.
Mm-hmm.
Leave me here.
Mm-hmm.
I go through the weekend. I don't tell anybody. Don't tell my friends anything. Monday comes, I'm calling. Can I speak to the doctor? Tuesday, can I speak to the doctor? I didn't get to speak to the doctor until Thursday.
Mm-hmm.
And the doctor apologized because he thought that I didn't know and he wasn't
Right.
going to tell me over the phone. The nurse practitioner who told me apologized because she thought I was going to be able to speak to the doctor.
Right.
Now, here I am getting ready to get off public assistance. Now I've got to have a radical hysterectomy.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, what am I going to do? So I had 2 caseworkers. The first one I called was very nasty. And I said, listen, I got to have a hysterectomy. I'm crying. I'm like, and she
Mm-hmm.
says, I said, I'm going to need childcare. She said, if you're not going to school or working, we don't pay for childcare. And she hangs up on me. And then I call her boss, and he hung up on me.
Mm-hmm.
So I sat at my job, and I literally made 25 phone calls. I called everywhere I could think of.
And you made it happen.
And I just kept saying,
Mm-hmm.
telling them a little bit of my story.
Right.
And I got a phone call that Monday. I'm transitioning now. It was 4th of
Mm-hmm.
July weekend. I remember I got a phone call that Monday from the head of public assistance that was down in
Uh-huh.
Trenton, New Jersey. And he
Mm-hmm.
headed up these 3 counties. And he said, I called him. I got a phone call back saying, please come in and schedule your child care. So that's why I say, if you got to share a little bit. So let me go fast forward. I get my hysterectomy. Now I've got to go back to work, and, ups and downs, getting back to where I was. And later on, I'm working for American Red Cross. and I'm doing this program called Sister. It was Sisters Informing Sisters about topics on AIDS. So I went to the consortium with all of these agencies who were servicing people, women
Mhm.
especially, who were on public assistance, and they had to go through these classes. And I said, I'd like to give women empowerment classes. And as I'm at this consortium, when I finished, this woman walks up to me and asked me, she said, did Peter and Lund enjoy your presentation? And I said, that was one of the men that hung up on me.
Isn't that? Look at that. Look at
Okay.
that.
I purposely didn't tell him because I
Mm-hmm.
wanted to be able to go in front of all those women who were getting public assistance to let
Mm-hmm.
them know, we can do this.
That's right. That's
I
right.
purposely didn't tell him because I said, you know what, we can do this. So I'm just going to go fast forward because I know we're running out of time, but I do want to say I have been living in Florida now for 3 years. And I always
What
tell
what
people,
we doing? But what you when you left from New Jersey to Florida, just quickly, why did you move? I
I
know
was
that.
just going to say that. He put a ring on
Look at that. Look at that.
it.
Now,
Okay.
please
Okay.
please, we have to share
He put a
that. I
ring on it.
know that you didn't think that
So,
you would get married and that you would have that sort of kind of fairy tale kind of feeling. That's what I understand came out of one of your
well, I met my
speaking
husband
engagements.
actually back in the 80s,
Mm-hmm.
and we were going to get married. And he says, I kicked him to the curb. The next person he met, he married. They were
Okay.
together for almost 30 years. And he would call me every once in a while. And I'd have an attitude. Don't call me, you're married. Okay. And I was sitting on the beach in Fort Lauderdale in 2016, and I'm thumbing through Facebook. And I saw that he had moved to Florida. And I was
Mm-hmm.
like, I wonder. And I contacted him through Facebook only to find out that he had been living in down here for, I guess, a year with his cousin.
Okay.
And we didn't talk for a whole nother year.
Uh-huh.
We got back together. He is actually, I never loved anybody more than him. I
Mm.
never loved anybody more than him. So yes, of course he knew initially. He had heard that I was positive. First of all, okay.
Right.
But of course we had that conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And as long as he was comfortable, I was comfortable, and we were okay because I would never. It was just me, Gina. I refused to lay down with someone and not tell them because somebody did that to me.
Yeah. Yeah. Or lay down with someone, especially in this day and age, and not check. Not be in the
Exactly.
room with somebody and check. You have to be very, very careful because you don't know you sleep. The truth of the matter is that you think you're sleeping with one person. The truth of the matter, you could be sleeping with 10 people, and that one night, or those one time, or the 3 times, you could be sleeping with 20, 10, 5 people. Because that person is sleeping with somebody, and you don't know how many people are sleeping with that other person. And so now it's like this whole big, what would you say, orgy, so to speak.
Right.
You know what
Right.
I'm saying? And
That
you
you don't
didn't
even know.
willing exactly. You didn't even willingly say that you were a willing participant in this orgy, but yet here you are because you're being reckless. You're not being responsible. So here it is now. Look at you, all married, beautiful ring. You out in the sunshine state.
Yes, I am. So, I recognize, like I said, I recognize that there are many women like myself who
Mhm.
did not heed the warning signs. And I want to share with women, first of all, if you can learn from my mistakes, if
Yeah.
I tell you that the stove is hot and you don't need to get burned. So
Mm-hmm.
I want women to listen to themselves
Mm-hmm.
and not second guess themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Know that you have the power within you. You have that voice in you that you need to listen to your own intuition. Don't second guess yourself. So I know that I'm out here speaking to women's groups, colleges, wherever I can. I'm sharing my story in the hopes that people don't get burned. And I always tell people, I choose not to be a common man. It's my right to be uncommon if I can. I seek opportunity, not security. I do not wish to be a kept citizen, humbled and dull by having the state look after me. I prefer the challenges of life to the guaranteed existence, the thrill of fulfillment to the stale calm of utopia. Dawn Breedon will never power for a new master, nor will I bend to any threat. It is my heritage to stand erect, proud, and unafraid to enjoy the benefits of my creations and face the world boldly and say, this I have done. If I fail, if I succeed, at least I lived as I believe. Thank you so much, Gina.
Woo! Miss Breedon. Oh my goodness. Absolutely beautiful. Oh my goodness. I love it. And I asked Dawn if she would please say her ending because that's how she usually ends her talks. And it's just so inspirational, so beautiful. I mean, to just, who knew from when your brother gifted you with that book, that this would be your journey. And you didn't ask for HIV. You didn't ask for that at all. However, HIV has taken you places that you didn't even know that you would be taken. I
Absolutely.
mean, I know that you were also awarded in 2013 a Woman of Distinction Award, but you shared the same platform as Nia Long and Sanaa Lathan. I
That
mean,
was fun.
like, you know what I'm saying? And then the amount of people that you've met. I know that Les Brown wrote a review of your book. I mean, come on. I mean, and you're still smiling. And oh, wow. Dawn, God bless you. God bless
Thank
you.
you.
I mean, this is really a story. And this is why I want people to share their journey, because folks will know, oh, yes, Dawn wrote a book. And yes, Dawn is a motivational speaker. But what has Dawn been through? And even though you're smiling right now, I am sure you still have moments sometimes where you have to remember to breathe. You
Absolutely.
have to remember to breathe. Oh my goodness. And I wanted Dawn's husband on, but unfortunately he was unable to join us today, but he was raring to go. We were going to have him on. And another time, Dawn and her husband will definitely come back. I definitely want all of you to check Dawn's website, which is www.dawnbreedon.com. If you'd like to contact Dawn for any speaking engagements, or to even just, speak to her about what you learned today, share your inspirational story, or just thank her for sharing her story, that's Dawn at dawnbreedon.com. On Facebook, you can find Dawn at Dawn Breedon Speaker. And on IG, you can find her at dawn.breedon. I'm telling you, this is amazing. We have so many folks, Dawn, that tuned in today to hear you. We have folks from Georgia, Jersey, Houston, Long Island. I mean, and then they just keep coming. The Bronx. I mean, and they're just saying, remember to breathe. Hi, Veronica Thomas. Hello, my beautiful friend. We have Chanel Robb. They are being blessed with the anointing, best of the best. We have Wade Anthony is saying welcome. We have Deborah Everett. Wow, just totally blown away with your story. We have Nalda from Houston. We have Kim. Kim is actually my cousin who introduced me to Dawn, and she was blown away with her story. And Kim, I thank you so much, not from the bottom of my heart, but from my heart, for Dawn to be able to share her story on this platform. I thank you so much, because without you, I wouldn't be speaking to Dawn. And, I have another friend, and I told Dawn, I said, you remind me of a friend of mine, and she actually HIV, and now she has full-blown AIDS. And years ago, I did a show and I had her on, but I've known her for years. And I said, Dawn, I said, your personality, your upbeat nature reminds me of her. And who knew? She knows her too.
Shout out to Maria. I love her.
Oh my goodness. So, Deborah's Faith Works. We have Diana's on, and she's just saying welcome as well. So everybody is just, we have Ramona Say, I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly, Ramona. She's saying it's important to listen to your inner voice. Thank you for sharing your story. We have Darlene on that's saying good afternoon. Diana also says, thank you, Dawn, for sharing your testimony. We have Danielle, powerful story. Thanks so much for sharing. This is what it's about. And, the show is all about wellness. Learn, uplift, and inspire. And while we can laugh and we can joke, we also have to be true to ourselves. We need to really know what's going on. And Dawn made a really good point in terms of being honest. And not enough of us are honest with ourselves, are honest just in general, and man, Dawn, what do I say? You're so beautiful. Let me zoom in again on. Listen, I gotta zoom in again on this beautiful lady.
Oh, thank you.
And Dawn, I know I also saw that you said your purpose on this earth is to help others pull through adverse situations. There's just so many people that are grateful for you sharing your story, being so transparent. You know, I really hope you come back again and you let us know what you're doing, what's upcoming, what's your next event, what are you doing? Please tell us. First of all, we started at 3:30. Okay, now Gina doesn't mess with the time of her show. But there are going to be some times where I have to be flexible, or because I want to be flexible, like I was flexible last week. And so, Dawn, tell us why you were unable to join at 3 o'clock, and we started at 3:30. What do you do on Wednesdays?
I run a support group for an agency out of Bergen County, out of Essex County. It's called Team Management 2000. And I run a support group for people who are HIV positive. And the support group actually, the agency is in New Jersey, but the support group is national. So I have people from all over, from New Jersey. I have them from Minnesota. I have them from Atlanta. I have them from Florida. So we all get together so that I keep that time.
Yeah.
And that's something that's very near and dear to me. And I get people all the time that come from different places. So that's why I'm so grateful that you were able to accommodate me and change your schedule.
Oh, without a doubt. Because how I looked at it is that it could be someone who was looking forward to today, and then to find out that you were unable to attend. And it could have caused maybe some turmoil in their life.
And
You
I did have
know,
some new people on there today.
you
So
see
yes.
that? You see that? And I said, no, 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 no. We'll leave it as is. And then, we will start the show a little later. So remember, everyone, Dawn is available for speaking engagement. She is an amazing speaker. She really drives home the point. And please check out her webpage. Please check out her on Facebook. Check her out on IG. Please send her an email. Let her know how much you enjoyed her testimony today. Let her also know that you want to hire her for an engagement. Isn't that right, Dawn? Anything else you want to share?
No, that's it. I just thank you so much. I want to be able to help as many people as I can. So like I said, colleges, schools, women's groups, I'm there.
Wow. Thank you so much. I asked you if you would how you were feeling today, and you said, Gina, I'm feeling pretty good. And actually, Dawn is dealing with something right now, but the smile on her face is genuine, and she's handling what she needs to handle. And that's why I'm really grateful that she still agreed and she didn't cancel. She wanted to be here. And you know what? Dawn is just here. What are you showing us today, Dawn? Some mad love. Isn't that right?
Mad love. I love that song.
You don't show
Oh, God.
love, then you get no love. When you don't show love, then you get no love. Now you wanna show love, 'cause I get mad love. Mad love. Mad love.
Oh, Dawn, the Talk with Gina family loves you. We love you. We love you. We love you. And thank you so very much. Okay. You continue to take care of yourself. Please, you can find Dawn's book, Remember to Breathe. You can actually order it on Amazon. Pick it up. There's some great reviews that you can read that folks have had. Check out her website, read her book, be inspired, because I know, even though I know some of her story, I was further inspired by having you on. I appreciate you. We love you. And you continue to take care of yourself, okay?
Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome, Dawn. Take care now.
And thank you to your audience also. Thank you.
Lord, we have 3 more comments. Let me quickly go to them. Let me see. Oh, they're sending love. They're sending love, and they're saying awesome. So I thank you. Yeah, love back, right? Take care, Dawn. Bye-bye. Thanks so much, everybody. I really appreciate all of you joining today. This was a show that needed to be had. I will have many other shows that we'll bring on, offering that wellness, learn, uplift, and inspire. Everyone has a story. Isn't that true? Well, I can't stop without saying thank you to my sponsor, PPI Security, specializing in city, state, and government contracts. I ask, if you like the show, please subscribe, please like, and also please share with your loved ones and share with people that you know. In a few days, the shows will be uploaded to your favorite platform. All you have to do is search your favorite audio platform. Well, you know what? We're going out with some mad love once again. I absolutely appreciate each and every one of you. Till next time, you know I'm coming back with some more mad love.
Yeah.